guys, welcome back again. So we've had a couple conversations where we've talked about the gut microbiome, and what I love about talking to Wade and his team, we keep running into each other at conferences and such, is that we talk about solutions. When it comes to the gut, the science is so novel, and there's so much work being done in sequencing, and what tests can you take with your stool to figure out what your gut looks like, and all of that. And you've heard this in some of the other conversations we have, is kind of in development. Meanwhile, Wade and his team are saying, forget about that. We're already fixing people. So first of all, thanks, Wade, for joining us.
Great to be here. And always, it's so exciting to be in this field right now. And of course, your team is leading the way of actually specifying as to what genetics are going to respond best from what diets, what type of supplementation is going to work, what kind of lifestyle adjustments. And I think this is the sophistication that will transform our potential for living long and living strong for everybody. So I'm just delighted to be here and to contribute to it. We've been thinking about this for years, and now it's come to reality where there's science to prove it, and that's great.
It's a pleasure, because so all of us have sort of been in our various wheelhouses doing what we do, and this convergence is going to happen where you take the best of what's working and you put them all together, and there's ultimately a new healthcare model, because we're saying we already know what helps people at the root cause level. We're not trying to mask some symptoms, whether it's your amazing science and formulations, whether it's our genetic insights, whether it's some gut microbiome company that eventually is going to sort of triangulate and connect all this stuff. It's a new paradigm. This is the way health is meant to be, as opposed to this sick care model we keep complaining about. So anyways, the work you guys have been doing is awesome. And we can dive right in, because there's something you talk about, which is the 5 stages of digestion. And this is important because, again, everything in terms of gut, everyone that we talk to at least is, what gut test should I take? Have you seen this app about, should I eat coconuts or chickpeas? And that stuff, every 6 months you log on and it's telling you something different because the science is so new. Meanwhile, you've seen and done enough work on formulations to be able to say, here's the problem that's going to help the most people, right? Yeah, we can get into the precision later and those nuances of the 1 out of 10 that has an issue, right? Meanwhile, here we already know what to do. So let's start there. This concept you have of the 5 stages of digestion.
Yeah. And we're summarizing this for illustrative purposes. I mean, there's probably a million stages of digestion, but there's basically categories of how that breaks down. And first stage is the sensory experience of this food, which prepares your body to go into the digestive process. So it's taste, touch, smell, chewing the food, all of the sensory organs that have said, this is food that's good for me. The reason that we have things like the attractiveness of the ambrosia of walking through, say, an orchard versus the putrid smell of some rotting food that might be there. This actually tells us whether we should be consuming this or not. It prepares ourselves whether we're ready in a safe state. You want to be in your rest and relax psychology, and that's why maybe watching food or eating food in front of a television or through excessive stimulation, we tend to go unconscious in our eating practices and overeat. And so being sensory aware of what your senses are telling you about the food, the taste, texture, bite, and when you bite into it, what happens is your body will now start prepping various enzymatic reactions. Carbohydrate digestion starts right in the mouth. And then as the food goes into the second stage, from the sensory stage or the preliminary stage, it'll travel down the esophagus into the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. Now, I want to be clear about something. There is not a big bowl of acid sitting there waiting to digest your food. Your body is acutely aware that can differentiate between, say, I'm drinking water, which doesn't activate a lot of the digestive process, versus I'm eating a piece of steak or I'm eating an apple or whatever it happens to be. Your body will actually differentiate between the foods that it is consuming. So in the first 30 to 60 minutes after you've bitten it and chewing the food up, masticated it, and it goes down there, it's going to be in what's called the upper cardiac portion of the stomach. Now, ideally, the enzymes that are naturally concordant with that food would be present. Enzymes control everything from thinking to blinking, So
Right.
over 25,000 different enzymatic processes in the body, and they're essentially converters. They accelerate metabolic processes in the body, or a whole variety of things. And enzymes are the difference between the living and the dead. You
Hmm.
know, it's like, and there's a guy by the name of Dr. Edward Howe who put forth the enzyme bank account theory in his book, Enzyme Nutrition and Enzyme for Health and Longevity. And one of the reasons that a lot of people who are looking to live a long period of time, the one evidence that we've said that supports that, assuming you have good genetics, is eating less food.
Right.
But I have an expansion on the theory, because you need a certain amount of, there's also death from malnutrition, right?
Yeah,
It's
for
a
sure.
big contributor. So it's not less food, there's an optimal amount. And what constitutes the difference between too much and too little, I believe, is the body's capability of converting what you eat into either energy units, building blocks, and to be able to remove any excessive toxins that may disrupt the health and function of your body. And toxins being anything that disrupts normal biological conditions inside the body, or healthy biological, or the functioning of all the millions of processes that go on. And so what's unique about humans is that we've done something that no other species has done. And that is, we have changed the food that we naturally consume. And I'll give you an example. If I'm a carnivore, I have incisors, I rip food, I have tearing scissors, and I eat the food in its live state. I lick up the blood, I jet that, and I eat that food. I have a different intestinal tract, a shorter bowel movement, different bacteria present, and I can transit that food relatively quickly. Okay. If I'm a herbivore, or let's say I'm an omnivore, let's say a bear, right? I'll eat berries, I'll eat salmon. I can determine whether it's berries or salmon by a seasonal component, and I'll eat those and my body will digest those. If I go to an herbivore, like a cow or a horse, I'm going to have a very specific set of food. All of those foods are going to be consumed in a live raw state, which has both its enzymes and probiotics that would be associated with that food. Humans, because of our big brains, we figured out how to overcome famine that affects all species in life. And we've done that by changing our food production and our storage and our preservation of food. So in other words, food scarcity was a big issue throughout all of humanity, and still is in some parts of the world. But with industrialization, we came up with a way to cook food, sterilize food, store food, preserve food. And largely in part, most of those processes destroy the natural enzymes and probiotics present that we would actually use to break that food down and convert it into the energy units. So the advantages in calories and the advantages in nutrients with industrialization has created a different problem in digestive issues. And to echo that, the data is now indicating that in our medical industry, with 12% of the emergency hospital visits are now related to gastrointestinal issues, and over 100 million people a day in the United States are suffering from some form of digestive stress, whether they ate the wrong food, whether there was something in the food, or whether they didn't have the ability to break down the food. They felt gas, bloating, indigestion, heartburn, acid reflux, all those different things that happen. So going back to that second stage, that food gets into that part, the enzymes present in the food are supposed to break it down. Now, if it's not present, there's an incomplete aspect of digestion that started to happen right there. In other words, our body's going to start producing enzymes, but those aren't going to be secreted until later in the intestinal process, not in the pre-digestive stage where it should have happened. And to give you an example, if you compare human bodies to animal-based bodies, we have a pancreas that's 3.5 times larger than any other species by weight. Why? Well, we happen to eat a lot of sugar and a lot of simple carbohydrates in our industrialized packing, because it's cheap, it's efficient, you get a lot of calories, it tastes good, all of those things. Well, our pancreas, which stores our carbohydrate digesting enzymes, that starts to increase. Right? It gets bigger and bigger, use it. And then of course, people have issues around that. So that's that stage. Now, after that, after 30 to 60 minutes, the third stage happens is hydrochloric acid will come into the body. Now, hydrochloric acid has two main functions. Function number one is to disinfect your food. Viruses, bacteria, bugs, pathogens, parasites, all of those will be killed if you have a sufficient amount of hydrochloric acid that is released in the body. Now, the other thing that hydrochloric acid does is it changes the pH of the food chyme. It's all kind of binding together and going through the digestive convulsions inside the intestinal tract that's normal. And as that pH changed, some enzymes become active, some enzymes become deactivated in that process. Once that's completed, your body will release, it'll go into the intestinal tract, and where, probiotics are going to work on it. But before it does it, it's going to release some minerals to buffer the acid, because if you have an excess of acid leaking into the intestinal tract, this is where people get duodenal ulcers and things like that, which are very painful and can be very dangerous. In fact, they can be fatal if left unchecked. Now, a lot of people suffer from acid reflux and heartburn, and they'll say, oh, well, why do I have that? Well, I don't have enough acid. Well, that may be true, but the likely case is that your body didn't produce enough hydrochloric acid, and the food started to ferment, and the little esophageal sphincter popped open on the intestinal tract, and you started burping up or belching up a bunch of the acid and food mixture, which leads to heartburn and acid reflux. And over the long term, that's a very dire condition. Now, a lot of people take an antacid thinking, oh, I got too much acid, I'm going to buffer that. But now you're further disrupting your digestive system, and you may have an overcropping of things like H. pylori, which is also creating part of the problem, because you have an overgrowth of bacteria because you're not killing them off. Now, there are solutions for that. We'll get to that in a minute. That is, in this fourth stage, the intestinal tract, now your bacteria cultures at various stages in the intestinal tract are going to start converting that food chyme, that broken down food, into either energy units or into building blocks. That's your good guys. So I always say there's 10% good, 10% bad, and 80% opportunists. There is considerable amount, like I forget what the ratio of genetic material available from bacteria versus our cells, but it's many times more bacteria in our body than there is cells in our body. Some people say it's 10 times, some people say it's 4 times. It's a lot. The bottom line is we kind of look like mushrooms run by bacteria that are running the engine, but who knows? Well, anyways, each one of these bacteria will convert that food into usable units unless you have an overgrowth of the bad guys. That's when you produce endotoxins, indol, skatol, all kinds of things like that. A variety of, particularly with undigested proteins or fats that don't break down, you can get these rancid fats and rancid proteins that lead to serious gastrointestinal problems. You may have agents that can create leakage, breakage in the little biofilm that's in there, where now food particles will start leaking in. So there's some evidence to suggest that things like glyphosates and stuff can be disrupting that, and other chemicals are out there. And there's a whole movement for and against that story. And so you can determine it. I always suggest people go on an elimination diet and find out if that impacts it, and then using probiotics. And then the final stage is the elimination phase. So a lot of people are suffering from either diarrhea, constipation, which is oftentimes it's a narrowing. You get a buildup of plaque in there, and you have a narrowing of the colon. Lack of hydration is a big issue. So many people today drink things that aren't water. They're actually in a state of chronic dehydration. You can measure that with an electrointerstitial water scan. It'll show all the organs of the body and how they're hydrated. And hydration is a big factor that a lot of people don't think of when they're looking at their health program. Everything works better when you're hydrated.
For sure.
Everything doesn't work that well when you're dehydrated. And so all athletes put a focus on hydration because they understand they're measuring their performance, and a lot of people don't realize it when it comes out. So those are the 5 stages that deal with it. And the 3 elements that can enhance your digestion are enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and probiotics. But the question is, what enzymes, what hydrochloric acid, and what probiotics are right for me to get the maximum benefit?
So that was like, I feel like we just went through 4 years of university and you condensed it into exactly what we actually need to know. And if anyone were just to replay that and listen, this is the information you've been waiting for. That question about, yeah, gut's a problem. Gut's the root cause of disease. Gut's making me feel horrible. But where do I intervene? Where do I start? So where do you actually start when it comes to, you mentioned here's 3 solutions. How do you sort of hack this and know major process you just laid out, 5 steps? There's a lot going on there. People should re-listen to this and, learn it. Where do you start? Where do you intervene if tomorrow's like day one?
Well, funny you should say that, because Matt and I, my business partner, we're at polar opposites of the spectrum on our DNA test. So,
Right.
for example, he responds very well to a ketogenic style diet,
Right.
and I respond very well to a plant-based diet, which is okay.
Right.
So, one of the things is if you can determine what diet is best for you, that's a great start, because that's going to eliminate a lot of the problems off the first place. So, for example, it's interesting enough, and I'm going to make a leap here, but I think it's worthwhile. In my family history, there is, like, relative in my relatives on one side of the family, there's a high incidence of gallbladder issues, which is related to lipid digestion. Right. Gallbladders release lipase-based enzymes, which break down fats. Well, funny enough, when I would try a ketogenic diet, because Matt would say, hey, try this ketogenic diet, it's really good, I'd hit a certain level of fat in the diet and I would just get the runs. I wouldn't feel good. Yeah. I felt lousy. Conversely, he would go on my high carbohydrate plant-based diet. He'd feel terrible. And so what ended up happening is, but we both, as athletes, because he was an athlete and I was an athlete, we both found that we did well on increasing our proteolytic enzymes, because we consume a considerable amount of protein and we want to digest and absorb and utilize it, because undigested protein is actually the biggest issue when it comes to complexities. So there was so we had one common element, that was protease, that breaks down protein. Lipase breaks down fats, and amylase breaks down carbohydrates, and then cellulase breaks down plant matter. And then there's various variants and families of those, and different classifications based on pH. And I won't get into all the nitty gritty, but at the very least, if you look at your diet, you say, okay, if I'm a ketogenic guy, I probably want an enzyme formulation that's high in protease and high in lipase. If I'm a plant-based person, I would probably want something that's high in amylase, a little bit of protease, but I'd want also a lot of cellulase in that particular diet. And if I'm just kind of ordinary and kind of not really thinking about it too much, an all-inclusive has protease, amylase, a little bit of cellulases, a little bit of lipases. And so we actually created 3 different styles of enzymes for the different types of diets that people would have. So enzymes would be first. So we have one, Masszymes is the ones for the masses. Pretty much everybody does well on that. We've been selling that product for 18 years. And it's the premium digestive enzyme blend of 17 different enzymes, which will cover anything. If you're a plant-based guy, you would be on like Vegzymes. And if you are a ketogenic person, you would do well on Capex, which is proteolytic and amylase. Right. Second phase is a simple test that people can do. Do I have enough hydrochloric acid or not? Very, very, very simple test. You can do this at home. Take a quarter teaspoon or quarter to half teaspoon of baking soda, put it in 4 ounces of water, mix it up and drink it. If you burp, do this on an empty stomach. If you burp within 5 minutes, you're good. You got enough hydrochloric acid. If you don't burp, chances are you're not producing enough hydrochloric acid, and you would do well if you added an HCl tablet with your meals or right immediately after, right? And we created a breakthrough hydrochloric acid that has a little bit of enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and some minerals that helps the buffering process as you come out. And then the last stage, when it comes to probiotics, there's a couple of different ways to look at probiotics. And by the way, we have a research facility in Croatia. We have 13 PhDs and master students. Matt's over there right now filming with our lab, showing some breakthrough stuff. I can't make any claims about it, but I can tell you that our team has made some breakthroughs that I can't wait for them to share with the world. It's very exciting because we're testing all kinds of things in the lab to see what these probiotics do. what kind of foods they eat, what kind of vitamins they respond to, what kind of antibiotics, all these different tests that we're doing on that. And ideally, we're going to be able to publish some papers and demonstrate how to select the right probiotics for you and what makes the probiotics do better in your body. And that'll be coming out soon. Some of it's built into our tech all right now, and some of it will come out later. But what we can say is that different types of probiotics are going to work better with different types of diets. And they're going to create responses in the body that are going to be supportive of you. And so, you know, unfortunately, the things that we started doing first was just literally testing products independently and recording how they feel. It's a very slow way to go about this process. But as a consumer, you can try different brands. But we categorize probiotics into a few different stages. Those who seem to have a positive effect on immune system response, or breaking down undigested proteins, or going after proteolytic organisms or disruptive proteolytic organisms. So things like that respond well to things like, we took a strain called L. plantarum, put it through a specialized enhancement process. They came out the other side with these unique abilities that they won't let us publish on or say on PowerPoint or on these type of things on YouTube, but you can go to our website and see the patent details. There are probiotics that are involved in the production of neurochemicals, and there are probiotics that are involved in kind of like the protection of our intestinal walls. And so we developed probiotic offerings in each one of those categories so that we could, based on a person, if they, you know, maybe they had a lot of gas and bloating, maybe they got sick all the time, or maybe they find that they're, you know, they have low mood or these type of dysregulated conditions, and we would suggest different probiotics for different reasons to people. And you can experiment with some of the best brands out there and find the probiotics that are right for you. I do believe the future will connect the DNA you have, the diet you have, and which probiotic strains are going to be superior for you based on your diet. Because the thing about your probiotic levels or your bacterial culture levels is they're changing literally all the time. That ratio is in constant flux. It's extremely dynamic environment because probiotics don't live forever. They replicate very fast relative to human lives, and they respond very quickly to changing conditions. For example, if you have a stressful situation, you can blow out a great bunch of your bacteria. If you take a bunch of antibiotics because you just went through surgery, you can wipe out a lot of your bacteria cultures, right? If you have a massive change in your diet, you go to another country and you have no access to your regular foods, often people will get sick or have disruptive digestive conditions, not because the food was bad or whatever. It's like all of a sudden they've got to switch their entire microbiome around in order to adjust to the new conditions and the new food, because some of these bacteria will go into a kind of a starvation phase and some will go into a replication phase because they have the bacteria or they have the food present that makes them grow, divide, and utilize, because they work symbiotically. If we didn't have these bacteria, we'd be dead. Now, of course, when it comes to pathogenic bacteria, we've used in the last 80 years antibiotics with massive success to wipe out bad bacteria. Unfortunately, we now have resistant strains of bacteria out there, and a lot of medical community have put up the alarm saying that we're entering into the post-antibiotic age in the next 10 to 20 years. And so we need to cultivate super probiotics in alternative ways in order to break down bacteria cultures that are like the quote unquote bad bacteria, or bacteria that are disruptive to our health or to our well-being. And you know, we're all working on that diligently for the future. So
cool. You know, I remember being at an event and seeing the Capex product there, and I saw it was, you know, a keto diet supportive probiotic product, and actually an enzyme product, sorry. So I picked it up thinking, you know, just it was there, I picked it up. And at that time I didn't know you guys so well. And then I had a friend here back in Toronto where I am who was on the keto diet who took it, and they said that nothing has ever worked for them the way this product worked. You know, and I didn't think anything of it when I gave it to them. It said the word keto on it, so I thought, let me just make him happy. I got him a gift, right? But they said that like nothing works, and then they want to know what it was about. And that's when we started looking into what you guys are doing, because that personalization is the future. That personalization is the ultimate luxury. Like, this is what I need. And the really cool thing about what you're saying, if people really listen to the nuances, is that the purpose is you're talking about digestion, you're talking about the gut, but the ancillary benefits that people receive when they do this, you're talking about healing the gut lining. You're talking about healing neurochemicals and mood, and healing that gut lining. We're talking about things that could possibly cross the blood-brain barrier as they escape your gut lining, toxicity that is causing inflammation from head to toe. So what seems very sort of day-to-day basic recreational is truly like disease prevention.
And also it can work in concert. So I'm having a relatively famous plastic surgeon is coming over to the house this week, because he's using our Masszymes product to accelerate healing in the body, because Masszymes contains a tremendous amount of proteolytic enzymes. Research has shown how proteolytic enzymes in martial arts fighters would allow contusions and bruises and cuts and scars and things that were the damage that they take in those fights go from repairs of, sometimes it would be 2 weeks that would have a black eye or some scar tissue to be, healed up in a few days. And so this surgeon started using it in his facility, as are other surgeons, and said it was night and day how quickly his patients were recovering when they would take handfuls of these proteolytic enzymes on an empty stomach, because they would be converted and the body would break this down. And so I think there's a lot of anecdotal evidence and some research and medical doctors who have used high dosages of these type of enzymes for accelerating recovery and healing. And I used it in my career as a bodybuilder. I used lots of these proteolytic enzymes to enhance my recovery from training, the damage I would do from working out. And so that's another little hack on the performance side for people if they want to know.
Oh, that's really cool. And I've found it myself, because I've been using some of your products, and there's days where, I can push a little harder, and I never put these things together until we literally just spoke now. Really, I'm bringing that recovery is accelerated because the inflammation is being fought, and, there's this kind of exponential benefit to things. And that's really cool about what you're doing. If you truly go to the root, that central hub, all these little spokes poking out of it kind of go away. So bringing it back to basics, when you think about gut digestion, like why people are excited to hear from you, the basics are like, when I eat, I get bloated. When I eat, I'm full. When I eat, I feel drained and I have no energy. So what do you say about those things? The very basics, like how do you even deal with starting from there?
Yeah. So as I would classify things into a few categories. If you have that, I felt like I ate a brick feeling,
Yeah.
you eat a bunch of food and it feels like it's just sitting in your stomach.
Yeah.
It's actually a good feedback. Typically, you don't have enough enzymes to break down that type of food. So whether, certain types of food are causing the problem. So for example, maybe you're sensitive to gluten, and you need, you can eat everything else, but you go out, to your favorite Italian place, you have a big pasta dinner and you're sitting there like, oh man, or you get constipated for a couple of days. Chances are you're sensitive to gluten. So you might want to use a gluten enzyme like, Gluten Guardian prior to eating. And that'll break, it's a dipeptidyl peptidase 4, which is an enzyme that actually breaks down gluten. It's very popular for people who are sensitive to that. The other thing is maybe you're sensitive to steak, or maybe you're like, whatever you have that brick in the stomach feeling, it's usually an enzyme issue, right? So you want a good digestive enzyme just before you eat, 2, 3, 4 caps beforehand, boom, you're not going to have a digestive problem. It's people that have that, it's just like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Now, if you have heartburn, acid reflux stuff, almost always it's a hydrochloric acid issue or a disbalance with your H. pylori. Sometimes it's a combination, because if you've been low on HCl for a while, H. pylori can increase. So get something to take out the H. pylori, add a HCl capsule with your meals, you're good to go. And then the third stage, if you're getting that constipation or gas, like a lot of ladies will say, I get gas, or I get bloated, or I get distended stomach. Well, what's happening is you have undigested food, which is fermenting in your intestinal tract. And most of us have been subjugated to, antibiotics at some point and might not have repopulated our bacteria, or we've gone through a stressful period which disrupted our bacteria, or we're not eating a diet that is concordant with our natural DNA and our natural bacteria that is present with us.
Right.
And so we want to, number one, go through food restriction. In other words, start figuring out which foods cause the biggest problem, but more importantly, adding in particularly proteolytic bacteria of our probiotics. And there's not many of those products, because usually if you're getting that bloated fermented stage, it's bad bacteria, the ones that aren't healthy for you. They're eating protein and producing a bunch of these nasty gases and toxins that's causing bloating. Okay. And so you want to go after that with something like P3OM, which is, really good at attacking that. If you're nowadays they talk about, I think it was Harvard came out with a paper about intestinal lining, like leaky gut. And that was kind of poo-pooed by the medical industry for 20 years. Well, now they've actually proven that virtually everybody has a certain amount of leaky gut. So in that, I would put an IgY Max combination with strains of bacteria that will help repair that tissue. You can get that. You can get those things. We have a product like that as well called Biome Breakthrough that helps rebuild the lining. So
cool. And I should let everyone know that you were kind enough to actually extend a discount for everybody, which you didn't have to do, but it was very kind of you. I personally, so as you know, we make supplements, right? And there was a couple of products that we were making centered around the gut and digestion. And when we started using your stuff, we just threw them in the garbage because we realized the science behind what you guys do. We didn't realize that there was anyone that had done that much work and in-depth research around, and when I spoke to Matt and he told me about the work you guys are doing in Europe and the research, and I was blown away because I hadn't seen anything like this. So we literally just stopped making our stuff and we personally use yours now. But I should let everyone know, if you go to BiOptimizers.com, and use the code BiohackYourDNA20. So BiohackYourDNA20, you'll get 20% off. And again, thank you for the team for that. So having said that,
one other item I want to add to that too.
Yeah, sure.
We're very education centric, but we de-risk everything. So if a person tries any of our products and it doesn't produce the result that they were hoping for, you just call us up, you email us, text us, we'll give you your money back. We'll refund your initial purchase price to say, hey, you know what? Thanks for the test. Go on to the next one. Because it's not a perfect science yet, but we can solve these people's, and we have an extremely low refund rate.
Yeah. And I think the reason why, because I've heard in the industry, like in terms of attrition or people sticking to a product, you guys, like your customers are like very sticky and loyal fans because there's an outcome. It's outcome based, right? It's not about here's a sticker that says something that's related to some pain point you feel, right? Here's the thing that says what you're looking for. You actually are personalizing. No, here's why you feel that way, right? And here's exactly what you need to do with the why, which is awesome, and why I've dove in and used the stuff. So having said that, if somebody wanted to get started, what's that? A lot of the stuff you've spoken of today, I'm sure people didn't even know existed as products. So what's that stack? What's that thing like? Here's your kit. Here's your personal kit.
The ultimate digestive stack I would start with is Masszymes, HCl, P3OM. There's special discounts. You can save to 38% with that 20% coupon. If you throw that in, we'll throw in some extra bonuses on it. We'll actually send you a little book that will explain how to use it, how to optimize it. And you can go through. Generally, you take all three. The easy way to do it is you just take all three products all at once just before you eat. And most people within 30 days are like, I can't believe how different it is. Number one, I will say, we will turn your number twos into number ones. In other words, like your bathroom experience for people who are bound up or have trouble in that area is dramatically improved upon. That's one of the biggest reports that people come back as like, wow, they're like, oh, I feel good. And when you get the crap out of your body, you feel great. Everybody knows what it's like on the ride up on Saturday night at the sports bar, loading up at the sports bar, and everybody knows what it feels like Sunday and Monday morning. Right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So you want to get to your prime level as fast as possible. Digestive health is the best way to get there.
Yeah. And people don't realize that when you think of digestion, people think of these as siloed things. This is me breaking down my food and turning it into fuel. But as you said, the fifth step is elimination, which is the key to your detox. There's no point taking detox supplements, glutathione, all this stuff, but there's no exit,
That's
right?
right.
And for people that are not digesting properly, that are, like you said, constipated for 2 days, where is it all going? You
Well, I
know?
mean, anybody that's had a plugged toilet,
Yeah.
figure out, oh, you don't want that going on very long. Well, people have been plugged up in their bodies for 20, 30 years.
Yeah. It's horrible. And they don't realize, and they're never told. And again, it's nobody's fault. This knowledge is ancient wisdom that has disappeared and is now coming back, which is that if it's not coming out, what's the detox? There is no detox. So and this is what I keep seeing is when you take stuff to fix the gut, the supplemental benefits that you weren't even intending, are exponential. And I feel it myself personally. So for somebody who's like listened to all this and mind is blown, can't wait to get started, they don't have access to it or they haven't ordered, what's one thing they could do tomorrow outside of supplements or anything? What should they do tomorrow just to take care of their gut and be on that road, at least start that journey?
I would say take a DNA, make sure that they're eating the food that's right for their body. Number two, I would say, is starting their day with a liter of water first thing in the morning before they eat.
1 liter.
Yeah. If they can get the body hydrated first, everything is going to work better.
Right.
And if you're dehydrated, it's very, very difficult for everything to work properly, and you're going to amplify everything. So I think those are two easy things that people can do in their health. Pick the food that's right for them, and make sure that they hydrate.
That is awesome. 1 liter I drink water when I get up.
Yeah.
There's this famous story of the CEO of Peloton where he goes to the washroom and he drinks right out of the sink in his hand. He said, why bother during a cup? I got to brush my teeth anyway and get my hands dirty. But, the practice of starting with water to hydrate is important. But 1 liter, I didn't realize that much.
Yeah. Well, if you wake up, a fun example is if you go and weigh yourself before you go to bed, and then weigh yourself when you wake up in the morning. And most people will find that they're anywhere between 1 and 3 pounds lighter.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense.
And that's just because you dehydrated over the period of the night. And you were probably dehydrated when you went to bed.
Yeah.
And so now you're in a state of super dehydration. Your brain fog, your blood is thicker. Okay. Any food in your digestive system has been dehydrated and hardening inside your system. Your cells are all kind of deflated, like when you leave something that's starting to dry in the sun, that's what's happening to your cells.
Yeah.
So plump up the cells. Number one, it makes it easier to eat the foods that are better for you. And number two, the foods that you eat afterwards are going to feel a lot better, and you didn't take any supplements. And then if you add, of course, our ultimate digestive health package there, you're going to be rocking and rolling.
That's awesome, man. I feel like we could talk for an hour on all this stuff. It's amazing. But I wanted to thank you for joining us, because you've taken stuff that has been so gray area and complex and so sort of fragmented. You hear so many different stories from different people depending on what part of the story they're working on, right? And whatever your solution is, you're still, here's what the body actually needs, which is, it just made it so eloquently easy to understand. And I thank you for that.
My much appreciation. And of course, I've really appreciated your company and what you're doing, because when we were kids, what you were doing was like a dream. That was the purported idea that we could do. And, if we look at where we'll be in 20 years,
yeah,
it's work that you're doing that is probably going to lead to more, I would say, quality time in individuals, in families, enjoying their life, because they got ahead of disease and ahead of dysfunction beforehand, because they were eating the right things, they were taking the right supplements, and they were following the right lifestyle adjustments based on them, not on someone like me or someone like any other advocate telling them what to do. They actually got what their body says they need.
Their body needs. Yeah. And
that
in every choice.
So
in every choice, I believe that there'll be a point where it doesn't matter where you are, your genome sequence, you're scanning whatever you're doing, and it's either right or wrong,
Yep.
The world is going to get that personalized. The technology is evolving every day. But then we need partners like you to go make the stuff, right?
You got it. So it's a great partnership. So thank you so much for having me on. It's really great. Wish you all the best. Thank you for all the great work you're doing.
All right, man. Thank you.
Take care.
If you want to keep diving deeper with your prescription for life with the Unpilled podcast, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. I've also written my first book, The DNA Way: Unlock the Secrets of Your Genes to Reverse Disease, Slow Aging, and Achieve Optimal Wellness. It's now available for pre-sale on Amazon. Take a look and enjoy, guys.